Badminton 1989 started a new era. Olympic course designer Hugh Thomas took over from the legendary Colonel Frank Weldon to become only the fourth director of this event since it started in 1949. 62 horses from 7 nations attended the first trot-up, but sadly 3 were spun, including Mark Phillips's Cartier at what was to have been his last ride at Badminton. Even a year after the Olympics, the competition was as hot as ever, and all the British riders were trying to stake their claim for a place at the European Championships at Burghley in the autumn. Reigning Whitbread champion, Ian Stark, with last year's runner-up Glenn Burney, and the great prospect of Murphy himself, formerly Ginny Lang's Burghley winner. Ginny started her Olympic bronze horse, Master Craftsman, and also Beneficial, her reserve for career. Karen Straker had a great chance with both her rides, and Jane Thirlwell, with King's Jester, were out to prove that their win at Burghley last year wasn't just a flash in the pan. But the crowds on Saturday stayed right to the end because New Zealand's dual gold medalist, Mark Todd, was drafted in at the 11th hour for the sideline Rodney Powell to ride the bay, the Irishman. The first we see in the dressage is Ian Stark and Murphy himself. And with me I have Mike Tucker.
Well, once again, 2 full days of dressage with glorious May sunshine. Well, for many, Ian and this powerful grey were one of the fancied contenders for this year's title. Being the first of his 2 rides, he sets out on the Thursday morning in conditions which would have suited him. Quiet, peaceful, something that this horse may well benefit and flourish from, because he certainly is a very powerful number.
In fact, it was this power which really brought about Ginny's downfall here last year. She just lost control going into the ski jump and just flew into space. And after the competition, I think she rightly decided that she could really hold the horse no longer and swapped him with Ian for one of his horses, Griffin.
Well, they've quickly become a marvellous partnership. Murphy and Ian, they've won in Holland, they've won in several major competitions, and quickly he settled down into a lovely rhythm. But it may well be an advantage for the competitors in the peace and quiet of the first morning's dressage. But one has to remember that the judges too are fresh to the competition. They won't have worked together for a while, and that means they won't be too generous early on. They don't want to give too many good marks away with 2 long days ahead of them. So they're difficult to please. Murphy, though, produces a nice outline, pleasing to the eye, and although one becomes very technical in the marks one gives, it is the picture that is formed by horse and rider that in the end does produce the really good marks.
It's the first time in this famous badminton dressage arena for this girl. Anna Herman from Sweden and Solmans Unique had a smashing ride round Burghley and were hoping to do the same here.
Well, this part of a very strong challenge from Sweden with the World Championships there in 1990. Anna, like so many foreign riders, spends their time in England. They there, of course, get the practice, the competition, which is so key to the education of these riders. And certainly this young lady and her horse, Scoldman's Unique, have benefited greatly from their experience in this country. Producing a flowing test, which is already catching the eyes of the judges, the good marks coming forward. The judges looking for free forward movement, as well, of course, as accuracy. When you're watching dressage, you really have to be very, very critical. Any little movement that's wrong will be noticed by the judges and will be marked down. And there, you notice that little break in the rhythm. That'll lose the odd mark or 2. But then a lovely flowing transition back to the walk, maintaining the picture, and into one of the most difficult movements of all, the free walk. So easy for the rider to tense and those steps to shorten, but you can see Anna and Scoldman's Unique relaxed, lovely free walk, which will have given her good marks, and indeed good enough marks to lead at the end of the first day.
Badminton 1988 ended in disaster for this combination at the Normandy Bank. But Mary Thompson and King Boris were back to try their luck again.
Well, there are many who feel Mary is one of the most talented event riders we have in this country, but as Julian has intimated, the big ones, including badminton, have eluded her, and I suspect that made her even more determined than ever. 2 chances. Well, King Boris, a very different type to what we've seen earlier. Doesn't always look as if he's enjoying it quite as much. You can see the tail swishing, the ears back, but producing a very accurate test. You can see there, extended, back to the trot, very accurate. And that's what's over the test that Mary's done, has scored her very good marks in the past, and is again doing the same. Again, from some of the earlier tests, perhaps King Boris not going as freely forward to score the top marks that will take her into top 2 or 3. You can see the forward motion rather curtailed, rather stinted, and that will again lose her the really good marks that are so important if you are to really win the title. It's a fact that if you're not in the top 4 or 5 after the dressage, you've got very little chance of winning this very, very coveted title. Well, Mary Thompson trained for many years with Sheila Wilcox, and as she comes up the centre line to finish, I doubt if she'll waste any marks here. Right on the button as she strikes off into the canter to come to the final halt, which again wants to be all square to complete the test.
Well, that was a good polished performance by Mary, but Ginny was expected to do an even better test on Master Craftsman. She was, of course, 3rd here last year and got the bronze medal at the Olympics in Korea.
Well, despite 1988 being a very successful year for this combination, it is thought that they've probably matured as a result of all that experience, and as a result, they're probably one of 3 joint favourites. Oh, and those flowers, the flowers being introduced for the first time around the arena, what a marvellous display they make. But probably not so popular with Ginny Leng at that moment in time, because Crafty taking a very long look, which totally stopped his rhythm, and probably means he'll only score 2 or 3 marks for that particular movement. And again, well, this is the point in time where Ginny's experience and skill was really put to the test, because she has to maintain her cool and calm, and not only maintain it herself, but pass it on to Craftsman and get back the equilibrium for those good marks. From the other tests we've seen, you'll see this is a very good moving horse. He has lovely movement. For a horse that has everything, you have to have movement, temperament, and of course courage. And that movement, if it can be trained, is again an important part of this dressage phase. Well, it certainly proved that the Holgates can do the training, and a lovely 5 steps back and into the working trot again means that Ginny has Crafty back on equilibrium to score some good marks despite the disappointing start.
This dressage test has in fact been in existence since 1975. It's a nice flowing test which lasts about 8 minutes, but the riders are beginning to get just a bit familiar with it, and it very soon will be changed. Angela Tucker in fact led the dressage phase here last year on General Bugle, and she was well capable of doing the same this year with good value. However, because Bugle made a bit of a Horlicks on the cross-country phase, Angela felt that being right at the top for the second day might just put on a jinx.
Well, despite that, she was still pretty determined to do as well as she could. Nice square halt. And that's not easy to achieve when the horses are very, very fit for the speed and endurance to come. And produces a lovely even step for the extended trot. Each step has to be exactly the same, and then transition back, very smooth, still maintaining the outline of the horse, which is very correct. And again, producing those steps lengthened, each step being the same.
In theory, to produce a really good dressage test, both horse and rider really must practice for hours a day over several years to get to this standard. Mark and the Irishman have been together less than a week.
Well, if there's any one man that can achieve the results that matter, it's definitely M. Todd. Probably one of the finest horsemen there is in the world. If you put him in any equestrian discipline, I think he'd probably find him very near to the top in every one of them. And so he very quickly achieved a marvellous rapport with this horse, and you can see from the relaxed walk, they look as one. But you saw that for a moment the horse's head just come up, and that's the attention to detail we've been talking about, which will lose him the odd mark. And let's remember, they just haven't been together for too long. Very bad luck on Rodney Powell. He's had so many near misses. Didn't have a very good year in 1988, and at the moment 1989 hadn't started off any better here at Badminton. Very difficult for Rodney to sit and watch, but he'll be gaining some compensation from watching all his hard work being put to very, very good effect by Mark. You notice the lovely seat that Mark has, lovely long back, which is absolutely ideal for a dressage rider. Amazing how he tucks himself up into the cross-country position, but of course he does that equally as well. First time we've really taken a close look at the counter-canter, well executed, keeping the rhythm, keeping the balance, and at the same time showing good transitions here into the extended canter, although perhaps not attacking quite as much as he could have done. And that's perhaps because he wouldn't know the horse quite as well as some others he's ridden. Well, that hasn't been a disadvantage to Irishman and Mark Todd, and despite a disappointing finish to the test, they certainly must put themselves in a position to challenge once again for the Whitbread title. So, with the dressage phase completed, it was Angela Tucker who led with good value. Less than 2 marks over Master Craftsman and Ginny Leng, with in third place Anna Herman with Scoldman's Unique for Sweden. Very close up in fourth was the young Canadian rider David Wilding Davis and Crusader on 52. Very much in touch in fifth place is King Boris and Mary Thompson, and then in sixth place it's Nicker McIrvin and Middle Road.
Before the competition started, I joined the walk round of the fences to see what Hugh Thomas had done to this famous badminton course. Well, the first fence, the Whitbread barrels, are unchanged. A nice inviting fence to get them going. Then this year, the course goes right-handed to the lamb creep. A classic example of the Willis brothers course-building craftsmanship. The slope on the takeoff makes it easier to jump. The pheasant feeder into Huntsman's Close is a brand new fence, but another nice inviting one to get horses and riders going. But then they have to thread their way through the trees as they come to the Huntsman's Hangover. This is becoming a feature fence at Badminton, but in fact it's the first time it will have been jumped this way round, and there's not a lot of room above. The Tracana is a fairly imposing obstacle, quite easy, but there's a massive 9'2" ditch underneath it. After that there's a long gallop up to the quarry, another feature fence at Badminton. It's the first time since 1985 that the quarry's been jumped in this direction. When the riders come into the wall, they really must be very under control, but still full of impulsion. They don't want to over-jump the wall, otherwise they'll come right down this steep drop and lose their balance before they go on to take the imposing steps out. Then it's over the road and down to the keeper's brush. A large but forgiving fence, but it's got a big ditch in front of it. A short gallop brings us up to the fairbanks. From the approach it looks easy enough, but on closer inspection it's one of the most difficult obstacles on the course. First seen here in 1985, it involves a drop, followed closely by a tight bounce. The modified ski jump is on a right-handed turn and caused great speculation. The log on top is considerably higher, but the rails have been removed at the bottom. The alternative route, with hardly any drop, is over 2 sets of rails with a sharp left-handed turn. And now the lake, the great crowd-pulling fence. Well, this year Hugh Thomas has given it a very continental look with the bright white railings and the flowers. As usual, there are 2 obvious routes. For the brave, a double of rails going in, but for the less brave, a much, much longer route, going round over a rail on dry land and doubling back over a rail with a drop into the water. The upturned punt coming out of the lake is a bit bigger this year, but the distance between the jump and the bank coming out is absolutely perfect to enable a horse to jump it well. There's no time for a sigh of relief after leaving the water, because this year the Whitbread drays are that much closer. This formidable obstacle actually jumps much better than it looks. The coffin is a bit of a surprise. There hasn't been one at Badminton for several years, and as coffins go, this is not easy. The poles are very upright, the banks very steep, and also close to the ditch. I suspect most riders will take one of the other 2 options. The side rails on the left, then over the ditch, or along it and out over the other side rails, which will waste a lot of time. There's a massive ditch under the silver birch, but being solidly built, it appears relatively easy. But it has a short approach, and in the shadows of the trees, it will need riding with the greatest respect. The corner at the Vicarage V has been made more inviting, with the take-off levelled, but it's still a difficult fence. Riders will be tempted to take this route, as the alternative of rails followed by a wide and undefined ditch is extremely time-consuming and not that much easier. The White Label Water Garden is a brand new fence. From the take-off side, it looks fairly innocuous, but there's the drop and there's the water. As with a lot of the fences on the course, there are easier alternatives, but the quick ones will go over that element, through the water, and bounce out. The last element is in fact at a slight angle, so the riders can choose the length and distance of that bounce. Hugh Thomas has removed the first of the Luckington Lane banks, claiming he didn't enjoy jumping both of them when he rode. So the single bank will need all the riding, but it's not too difficult. About 2/3 of the way round the course is centre walk. First the Aintree fence, and then beaches. The first 2 walls of this well-known badminton feature are at right angles, where accurate riding is needed. But then there's a choice. Either a long route involving an additional wall and taking the next one head-on, or a corner, a favoured route for the speed merchants. You have to have a very honest horse to jump the angle on the left of the Luckington Lane crossing. It's really a steeper angle than I've ever seen it before. But the alternative is to jump a hazard, turn left and go over the parallel bars and the second hedge head on. The old zigzag has been replaced by the Beefeater Bridge. The experienced horses will probably jump it on the right, but the alternative is a ditch, followed by 2 sets of rails. The Tokyo crossing is more picturesque than difficult, but a welcome relief this late on in the course. Jumping back into the deer park is the wooden wall, another not terribly difficult fence, but they've been a long way by now. Then it's only 2 to go. The stick pile is surprisingly one of the biggest fences on the course, but on flat land it's actually very easy. And finally, the Whitbread Bar, a welcome sight after nearly 4.5 miles and 30 imposing obstacles. It's built a little bit upright to stop riders getting overexcited at the sight of the finish flags. There are quite a few familiar fences on the course this year, but where Hugh Thomas has put his stamp on it, he's frightened the riders just as much as Frank Weldon ever did.
And so too Cross Country Day, where courage and fitness are going to be put to the test. Bright, sunlight sky with temperatures considerably cooler, but they certainly brought the crowds out in their thousands to witness what is one of the most social occasions in the spring season.
First in the draw, the poser and Robert Lemieux. It's always rather bad luck having to go first. Being the trailblazer on a course as big as this is a very unenviable task. But all the other competitors will be avidly watching the closed-circuit telesets to see how they get on.
Well, in all, there's some 24 kilometres to the overall speed and endurance test. It's all about rider judgment, and the steeplechase plays a very important part of that. Judgment of pace, economy of effort, what Ginny Lang and Benefish will be after.
Robert just taking the first few fences easily, getting into his stride. Here, coming out of Huntsman's Close.
In all, there are 9 fences on the steeplechase course, just over 2 miles, and has to be achieved within the time of 4 minutes 30 seconds. Chrissy Strawn taking a close look at her watch, which will help her judge her pace, because if she goes over that 4 minutes 30 seconds, she of course incurs 0.8 of a penalty for every second, so it can be quite expensive.
Meanwhile, Robert Lemieux and the poser coming to the first feature fence on the course, the quarry, opting for the fastest route there. Just a bit sticky as he comes out. And now starting in the tense moment in the box, Get Smart and Karen Straker, member of the Olympic team, the silver medal team. And Robert's still going steadily at the Fairbanks.
Very important to get 2 strides in there to then get the bounce, and Robert Lemieux gives a marvellous example of how to start. As Angela Tucker and Resolution do their second set on the steeplechase course, the actual required speed is 690 metres a minute. And that's something you learn through experience. Now the United States Challenge, Mike Huber on Phoenix. Mike, who won the Pan American individual gold medal some 2 years ago, so likely to give a very strong challenge at badminton.
This aerial view of the poser coming to the water gives some idea of the great scale of the event. The poser's been to badminton before, has in fact rather disappointed. The horse is a national one-day event champion, but it's a very different matter here at badminton. All the crowds waiting for action. And Robert taking the longer route there, the slightly easier route. Doesn't want to risk a bounce. But, well, I think Robert just rather ground the horse to a halt there. I must say it's depressing when you take the easier option and still have her stop. But over at the next attempt, but wasting an awful lot of time coming around to the rail with the drop in. And then the danger is not to get into the deep water ahead. And Robert very nearly does there. Well, back onto the hardcore. And out, but he'll be kicking himself for those 20 penalties.
So it's Karen Straker now, coming down to the Fairbanks. Always a fence that's caused a lot of concern from the riders, but generally ridden a lot better, as Karen does. So Robert Lemieux coming to the coffin. The one fence on the course that we've all feared, and I think probably it's had the effect, or the likely effect, of sending the riders the alternative route. Certainly it has Robert Lemieux. He gets away with taking a half shortcut, goes the long way at the first, and then dives across to try and save a bit of time at the second.
And now one that the crowds have all come to see. Ian Stark and Murphy himself. Well, this horse just loves motoring cross-country. Very, very strong, and a bit difficult at the tighter combinations.
Very interesting fence to Lake this time, and Karen Straker sits tight as she has to, but she's gone the short way, the first to do so. We're going to require a lot of good riding, but of course Get Smart and Karen after their Seoul Olympics, full of confidence. And they jumped the drays, which is some 100 metres closer to the lake, certainly requiring more skill.
Robert Lemieux, with his 20 penalties, he'll just want to get round as safely as possible without any more mishaps on the course. 2/3 of the way round, and Ian Stark at the quarry. Well, the last time he jumped it in this direction on Oxford Blue, they had a fall at the bottom. But not so with Murphy. Lovely jump out on this early part of the course.
So Mary Thompson with King Cuthbert is away. Mary's certainly out to prove that she's capable of this big event. Well, now it's that powerful grey, and this is one of the first difficult questions for Ian, because he's so bold that he's just got to pop down, take 2 strides, and then bounce. Well, certainly at this moment in time, Ian's got this big grey well controlled, well anchored. Robert Lemieux coming to Tom Smith's walls. Here, quite a lot of turning. Will he take the shortcut across the walls? No, he's playing it safe. Probably about 10 seconds to be added here, and he's certainly aiming to get round. If you get round badminton, you win one of the marvellous plates which a lot of the riders are after.
Meanwhile, I wonder what's going through Ian's mind here. The ski jump, this is where Murphy launched Ginny into space last year, but beautifully held, no fence at the bottom, and they're away.
Well, as you can see, Ian delighted with that. Now, Karen too going to take the long route at the coffin. I'm afraid that rail being so close to the ditch has rather put the riders off. I wonder whether anyone will try. Karen going the same route as Robert Lemieux, and Get Smart, very honest, very generous there. You see it again. All sorts of trouble, lands, loses impulsion, and the horse really cat-like, really athletic there. So Robert Lemieux with just about 3/4 of a mile left, and he's playing an alternative route at the bridge. When it's been jumped the other way, when it was the old zigzag, Robert, I'm afraid, has come to a sticky end twice there, but not this time.
Well, King Cuthbert, the less experienced of Mary's 2 rides, it's always interesting to wonder whether it's nicer to be drawn on your least experienced horse first and have your goodie to go at the end of the day when you've been round once, or to have the nice ride first to get your experience going for the least experienced horse. And Murphy at the white rails into the water, absolutely foot perfect. But Ian's still having to anchor him, and the dray's so much closer. Look at the horse pull. Well, Robert coming round what turned out to be a second attempt at the last. So rather disappointing round there for the Posen Robert Lemieux, but he's got round, so all the other riders will be very, very relieved indeed.
And what's interesting, Gillian, he's probably got round a lot better than a lot of the riders and officials thought, and that'll give them a lot of hope for the rest of the competitors. Some good riders going at the beginning, and that always gives so much confidence. And Get Smart and Karen Straker, certainly one of the best combinations there is in the country. Well, the second Luckerton crossing, I would think everybody will go the long way, the short way virtually unjumpable. Now the coffin, Murphy himself. He's going straight and beautifully through, real class. Well, Ian always said he was going to straight. He thought it would be more difficult to go round because he can't turn this horse easily, and so it's proved. He makes it look so easy, doesn't it? Real athleticism, and that has got to be confidence for everyone to follow. Now back at the lake. These white rails are not easy. Whoops! And there we are. King Cuthbert looks at the water, hits the first white rails and decants Mary. And that, I don't think, will be the only time we see that this afternoon. Well, Get Smart, full of running. The class machine, we thought. As King Cuthbert recovers at the lake, having gone the alternative route the second time. So she'll certainly get 60 penalties there.
Now one of the best younger riders in the country, Susanna Macaire. Not only is she a top young rider eventer, but she's also very good between the flags, point-to-pointing, with several wins under her belt. This is her first badminton.
Well, we get a glimpse there of the 10-minute halt, and Ginny Holgate in that, Ginny Lang. As Murphy himself ploughs on, comes to the Vicarage V, and I think that'll be an influential fence. It's going to provide a lot of accurate riding. And this is the moment on the course when Ian might have problems, and one begins to feel perhaps he has because he's slowing down. Normally you find Ian kicking like mad, but he has a real job to hold this horse, and the further he goes, the stronger he gets.
3, 2, 1.
And now Ginny with her first horse. This horse, in fact, her Olympic reserve, but not particularly experienced. This will be a very, very big test for Beneficial. But Ginny drawn first on this one. And Susanna at the lake, well, got over the first bit without decanting her, but saw the water and just ducked out, so very speedily recovered there. They'll get penalties for that, but not have wasted very much time.
Well, all eyes back on this grey. Murphy himself. These two fences across the centre walk, two big hedges. I don't think they'll cause any problems. As Susanna McCare comes to third from home, and she can't just play with this one too easily. A big ditch to a sleeped wall. Now, Ginny at the quarry. She would remember this because she had problems on Nightcap, and Beneficial isn't too experienced, but there Ginny showing her brilliance. Lovely piece of riding, takes Beneficial through very easily. Well, this is Tom Smith's Walls, and what will the Flying Scot dare here? Can he take the corner? An enormous jump over the first wall, but he's got him back and makes the corner child's play. Well, Ian must be getting excited. Let's hope that Murphy isn't getting too excited. He's certainly in charge at the moment. Ian's hanging on for grim death, and look at that. That is a road, and you don't normally bounce across a road.
Clissy Strawn from Devon, one of the most experienced and popular members of the horse trial circuit, on the first of her two rides here today. Well, Ginny always does a lot of gymnastic jumping work with their horses at home, and that'll be just what Beneficial needs here for the Fairbanks. Foot perfect, absolutely wonderful. And the reassuring pat. Clissy settling down at the lamb creep. And look at Murphy pulling at the Beefeater footbridge there. Ian's having to completely anchor him really strong. And now what's Ginny thinking as she comes to the ski jump? Well, no worries this year. The horse just lands neatly on the other side. I think that'll make Ginny's day already.
Well, the big grey, bred by Ros and Bunny Carew up in Scotland. There's always been a bit of a worry of just how he will go at the end of a three-day event, and he certainly looked as strong as ever. But Ian has managed to contain him and comes home and will go into an early lead. Great performance. And this, remember, is the first of two chances. He finished first and second last year, and the odds wouldn't be too long on him doing the same again. Now, coming to the lake is Ginny on Beneficial. She's going the straight way. Oh, he hits the first rail fairly hard. She does well to stay in the plate, but it loses all her momentum. And I think she'll now go round. This lake is certainly proving the most influential fence. It's a very, very clever fence, a real rider fence. So that's 20 penalties. But as Julian said earlier, not so experienced, and we rather see that there. He takes a look at the water, suddenly loses everything, catches his knees on the rails, and then grinds to a halt, and Ginny's left with nothing. Unusual sight, but I'm afraid it happens.
And now Angela Tucker in Resolution. Another one of the most experienced riders around Badminton. As Clissy gets herself set up for the drop of the wall at the quarry. She's got to Steady up, but ride very strongly. And that was nice, if not particularly tidy. Now Ginny, I'm sure, will take the long route at the coffin. And will probably take the slightly quicker of the longer routes. In fact, she's doing that. Pops over the ditch. And although inexperienced, very honest there, Beneficial, because they didn't have a lot of impulsion. Clissy at the Fairbanks. Again, very neat. This fence, when it was first introduced in '85, caused great consternation, but seems to be jumping well this year. Ginny now over halfway around the course, coming to the Vicarage V.
Now, interesting here that the alternative has driven the competitors to the corner, and that means that the riders have got to be very, very accurate. Cross a big ditch, oh, and there we are, set right up. Hugh Thomas has made the alternative very unattractive. They have to go the corner, they have to be accurate, and if they get it wrong, they miss, just as I'm afraid Beneficial has. And this time Ginny opts for the longer route, and you'll note now just how long it takes, and also the very difficult turn back to a ditch which never jumps very well. And what's more, it's very, very smelly. So another 20 penalties, a lot more time, but I think probably a lot of experience for Beneficial. So Clissy now at the lake, and she really drives at it. Clissy, who spends a lot of the winter show jumping, she had a very good stride to it, rode for it, and I think that's what the riders are going to have to do. Certainly the dray a lot closer to the lake, but it's not causing any problems. As Resolution steadies to go down the Fairbanks. Resolution, a New Zealand bred horse. Not with a lot of experience, but that'll give Angela a lot of confidence.
Only one bank this year at the first Luckington Lane crossing, but that's probably as well because the horses are being asked questions all round this track. Michael Huber from America, but he's based just down the road from Badminton, so he'll have been, no doubt, getting his adrenaline going, seeing all the things being set up during the previous weeks. Well, even though news has got back that Ian went straight through the coffin, doesn't look as if any other competitors are yet going to follow his example. Clissy taking the long route there. And Ginny at the hazard at Luckington Lane, an unmarked fence, but that's to get her straight for the parallel, followed by the hedge over the road. Very neat, and Ginny will be pleased with this young horse so far.
So Resolution it is to those white rails, jumps well in, rather hits the second, and Angela has to sit tight, clings round the neck. She doesn't want to get wet. Rather misses his footing coming out, but again is quick enough to recover, and now sees a lovely stride to the drays and gets that confidence back. So the Pan American champion it is, Mike Huber. The horses have to be really collected, balanced, 2 strides, and that's beautifully done. The Americans, who are very technical generally, those sort of fences come quite easily to them. Well, at the moment, Murphy himself been around with 5.6 time penalties, gets smart with 10, so there's no one going for the time at the moment. The course was regarded as very stiff, and that certainly is playing on the minds of the competitors. But this fence is jumping well. Phoenix jumps it very well, none of the ballooning that we had last year at this moment in time. Is waiting to start, one of the most popular competitors on the circuit, looking as relaxed as ever, Lorna Clark with Fearless Moore. And if there's any combination that would be fancied to go clear, I think it would be these two. They disappear 4.5 miles away and 30-odd big fences, as coming for home is Ginny Leng with Beneficial. She'll be pleased, I think, with the horse. Always, of course, with great ambition, Ginny, but she'll be pleased with the experience this horse has gained, and I don't think she'll be disappointed. And, of course, she's still got Master Craftsman to come.
Lorna, who is one of only 2 people to have ridden 3 horses round Badminton in the same day. This, in fact, under current rules is no longer feasible. And Lorna, having been so close to riding in 2 Olympics and just missing out at the very final selection, actually at the competition. Clissy just shaking her hands a bit as she goes into the footbridge.
Well, that's another shot of Mike Hubert going through the lake. But it's beginning to jump a little bit better. The message again getting back. Attack the lake. So Resolution, Angela Tucker coming to the Vicarage V. Ooh, he's got his head in the air. And he jumps right in the air, puts his back legs in the ditch and decants Mrs. Tucker on dry ground, thank goodness. Well, it's been quite a difficult build-up to badminton this time. The weather and a disease problem in horses has not given the horses a lot of start. And I think the inexperience and lack of competition showing here. You see it all in the legs go in the ditch and no chance at all for the jockey. That'll be disappointment. Mike Hubert, yet again, chooses the slower route. No one has taken the very slow route yet round. The second alternative does save this way, but for oof! And he really leaves a leg there. Mike Hubert has to sit very tight. Well, this horse, Fearless Moor, is very, very fast. He wouldn't be the prettiest horse there is on the circuit. Ooh, and that's a bit of a surprise. Quite sticky there. But you notice how Lorna kept her position, kept her leg on, and encouraged the horse to go on. Very, very good cross-country riding, that. Now Angela Tucker back on course, goes over the footbridge. When you have a problem, a fall, you have to control yourself, get yourself back into gear to go for home. And interestingly enough, we've been watching Resolution. Now we have Chopin, both horses coming from New Zealand, both actually brought over by Sarah Humber a number of years ago. Chopin ridden for the first time at Badminton by Rakenda Lord.
Mike Hubert now, nearly 2/3 of the way around this course, again making nothing of the water splash. He must be thoroughly enjoying his first outing at Badminton. And Lorna with the characteristic long reins. It's amazing, she hardly ever takes a hold on the horse's head. It's her own style and it seems to work incredibly well for her. Chopin pops down. Well, for a first-time rider getting through that fence, she's quite right to be elated there. Andrew Nicholson from New Zealand, another foreign rider who's based in England. Not a particularly experienced horse, this. The rider's been in their international teams before. Made nothing of the Trakehner. Meanwhile, Mike Hubert really getting the horse together. At the end of the course, horses are likely to just get a bit long, and with upright walls like this at Thomas Smith's, you can't afford to let them get too flat. He's taking the longer route. The corner at Thomas Smith's walls, before it was as well defined as it is now, always used to be the route for the death or glory people, but it is very jumpable now. Over the hazard.
So Lorna Clark, her turn to come to the lake. And Fearless Moor jumps it as well, and then trips and heads for the deep water. Luckily she manages to curb Fearless Moor's enthusiasm because it is about 10-15 foot out in the middle. But she's got quite a difficult problem to get out. She'll certainly need all the energy she can achieve, and does. Well, that would have lost her, I would think, some 7 or 8 seconds. As Michael Hubert comes with now less than half a mile left, and still no one really heading for that optimum time, which is quite significant. Well, one would have thought if there was a real jumping combination that might have gone straight, it might have been this, but no. There she turns, stops very quickly, and look at that. These days, The modern combinations really require athletic jumping, and there you saw it. So Andrew Nicholson has Scorpion over the keeper's brush. First time we've seen that. Another big, typical badminton fence. As the talented American comes to the last. He has another ride to come, and that will give him a lot of confidence. It's always the top rider's ambition to come to badminton at some stage in their life, because it is regarded as the individual world title, and that's why my Cuba's here. Fearless Moore going to the Vicarage V. And there you saw experience count. Old Fearless Moore summed it up, got it right, and popped across, making it look very easy. And comes to the white label water. This is a combination which Hugh Thomas will be pleased with. It has jumped very well indeed. Looks very foreboding, but it's jumped well.
Lorna still with her reins loose as Annabelle May and Signora Allegri start on the course. Now Annabelle, one of the younger May sisters, Suzanne and Nicola, who's got a ride later on today.
Fearless Moore makes nothing of that Luckington crossing. Remember, that's 25 foot across that. Chopin at the lake, Rakenda Lord. And this girl's confidence must be growing all the time. A young girl from Warwickshire, tremendous enthusiast, been at the sport a little while. But this will be the biggest day in her life if she gets round this course clear. And that's what she is so far. Senor Allegri really being set alight. Very determined effort this. As Fearless Moore comes to the third from home. And they're rather diving across that. You saw that. It's a big ditch with not a very big wall at the back.
Chopin taking, again, the longer route. Quite right for a first-timer. Would really be rather overbrave for... Oh, and they blew that. Now that was a shame. Not sure if the horse really deserved the pat there. Signora Allegri. Oh, well, they just got too big a stride there. Jumped far too close. I know Annabelle thought that Badminton might just be asking a bit of this horse. And again, she possibly ought to have taken the parallel route out. And now Miles Russell and Vindaloo the second. Another first-timer. In fact, there are quite a high percentage of first-timers at badminton here this year, earning their spurs at the big time.
Well, there may be a lot of youngsters earning their spurs, but this lady has certainly earned them. Lorna coming to the last, still has another ride to come, but this certainly would have been regarded as her best, Fearless Moore. The next one to come with not as many miles on the clock. Andrew Nicholson coming to the water on Scorpion, Diana Pickett Scorpion. And he, now alternative for him. Andrew Nicholson, I think personally one of the most talented New Zealand riders. They are building up a very, very good squad. Andrew, who rides a lot of good young horses. As Miles Russell and Vindaloo come to the quarry. Miles's parents, very enthusiastic family from Sussex who helped run the very good Breitling Horse Trials. And Miles, who's been campaigning with this horse while at the Royal Agricultural College.
And Scorpion for New Zealand.
Chopin, white label water, still just that one error. It's a great performance from this so far. So Vindaloo coming to the keeper's brush. He'd be a bit worried about that because this horse not always foot perfect at ditches, as indeed this horse is rather the same. Scorpion, and he's coming down to a fence we can't really see too well, a big silver birch oxer, a typical badminton fence, Julian, an enormous looking fence.
Yes, but it's got the deep ditch underneath it and the zigzag rails over the top. Well, this is an interesting approach at the Fairbanks. I think Miles and Vindaloo really just trying to achieve their ambition of getting round the course, no matter how long it takes them. All perfectly legal, but it's going to waste a lot of time. Through the chute and out over the parallel. and why not?
I think it brings home the case, which we haven't really highlighted that much, that badminton is everybody's ambition, for those who experience, those who are not. And here's a young lady who is experienced, Lucy Thompson on Ferryman the fourth. A combination that have promised quite a lot, and this could be their day. Senor Allegory coming to the coffin, and Annabelle May, who's had quite a sticky ride, and really Senor Allegory is saying thank you very much. Annabelle not given up yet. Very determined. Now, I wonder whether he's going to do this. Rather lands, yes, rather lands flat-footed. He's not going forward. You can see he's not enjoying it. He's not going forward and says, I think I've had enough. Well, let's hope that Ferryman's a bit more enthusiastic, because he jumps through the first of the Huntsman close fences, the pheasant feeder. 3 very inviting fences until then, the Huntsman's hangover. And here we take another look at Senior Allegory, still in trouble, I'm afraid, and that, I'm afraid, is retirement for Senor Allegory and Annabelle May. Well, we rejoin Ferryman. They're clear so far. Sits well back, and you really have to drive in the bottom, because when you look up at those fences, it looks a long, long way up. You must have impulsion, and Lucy Thompson does it to perfection. Well, Julian was quite right. This young lad's intention was to get round. He was at badminton for the first time. That he regarded as an honour, and we see the first one to go the very long way. Little hack up the ditch. He won't have all day to do it, I'm afraid, despite the lovely sunny weather. Then he turns and comes back over what should be an easier rail. A long way round, probably 15 seconds, but he's safe.
Well, despite all the riders' worries, this ski jump causing absolutely no problems at all this year, and in fact everybody being brave and taking the direct route so far. Jemima Johnson and Tim Barreur. Well, Jemima's been round before, and this combination got round Burley last year. Just had a bit of a look at the ditch. And Miles Russell lining himself up for the Vicarage V, taking the corner, and jumps it like an old pro. He'll be thrilled with that. Jemima just settling Tim Barreur, but does an enormous jump, and that's just the problem there at the quarry. You jump too big, you lose absolutely everything, and you just can't get out. So I'm afraid that's 20 penalties, and Jemima's got to get her pedals and her knitting back. And then just takes the little rail out. And now the first day's dressage leader, Anna Herman from Sweden on Skolman's Unique. Their first trip at badminton. Miles now. Great sigh of relief, certainly jumping over the centre walk fences. Nice let up, makes you feel you're on the way home. Ferryman wasting a bit of time. In fact, taking the very long route, so they're wasting a lot of time at the coffin. But makes nothing of it.
So the young Swedish combination safely over fence 5. With Lucy Thompson now 2/3 of the way round. The alternative here really out of play. Everyone going this way.
And Skolman's Unique at the water. Anna, who's been previously trained by Lucinda Green at Appleshaw. And the training really put to good use there. Marvellously ridden. Very athletic out.
And now we turn our attentions to Madeleine Gurdon, young lady who was in the British squad some 2 or 3 years ago. Has been a bit unlucky, but now with Midnight Monarch safely through the quarry. Anna Herman back at the coffin, being very positive, Anna, but she is going to play safe here, or as safe as possible. She's cutting back inside. Whoa, and very honest performance there from little Skolman's Unique. as away goes the young Canadian boy. David Wilding Davis, Crusader, earned his money to come to badminton by winning a very big prize money at Arizona in the United States.
Timberoo, meanwhile, just making a bit of a meal of the parallel there. And that's Madeline Gurdon, who's come off Midnight Monarch at the water. That's bad luck for them. They were second at Burley and were really hoping for a good ride.
This is the young Devon farmer, Mark Mingo. Saucy Gift, as just completing the course, is Anna Herman. And this is a tremendous performance by this young lady. Her first badminton, and she's one of the quickest so far. Could easily go close to the lead. Well, a lot of eyes will be on Jane Thirlwall from East Anglia on King's Jester. They remember one Burley in great style last September. Mark Mingo now at the water. Not a lot of experience, this boy, but always determined to cross country. And that goes a long way, and it's taken him through the lake. So Jane Thirlwall coming to the Fairbanks fence. No one really imposed himself on this competition yet, but she could. Only half gets him back, takes two, and tries to put in a third, and I'm afraid there is the result. Well, luckily King's Jester's been around a long time. He's quite quiet. As Morag is away, very few top-class mares in the sport, but this is certainly one. Really starts off in attacking vein. Well, there's King Jester, delighted to say none the worse, but of course great disappointment for Jane Thirlwall. Rosalind Small from Cornwall, ready to go with Beltane.
And here's David Wilding Davis from Canada. Now, what an extraordinary route to take here. Perfectly within the rules, but you'd have thought by the end of the course, and they were really going, and he's had really quite a decent round, he wouldn't have needed to go all around the countryside to jump that.
Saucy Gift now, Mark Mingo almost plays the penalty. He very nearly didn't get his line and did well to recover there. So Morag at the quarry. Nice controlled landing. Lovely bit of impulsion, persuasion on the top from young Sarah Cotton, and no penalties.
And Beltane. Now, Beltane is Rosalind Small's faithful old campaigner. Probably not one of the top horses in the country, but anyone would give their eye teeth to have a horse which continues to give her nice rides around these big tracks.
Well, Mark Mingo at centre walk. He actually may have to give up eventing after badminton to go farming, but he's certainly going well so far. As indeed is Sarah Cotton on Morag. Whoa! She very nearly takes off, but not quite. Sarah sits very tight. As Robert Lemieux, with already one completion under his belt, sets off on Lucy Chalice's Private Eye, one of the smallest horses in the field, but I would think one with one of the biggest hearts. Back with Mark Mingo, and isn't he riding with determination? He could get within the time, one of the only ones to look like it, as Morag goes the long way through the coffin, and as we've said already, it does lose 6 or 7 seconds, but there is again another very honest, courageous horse.
Beltane now at the lake, just showing his experience. Trotting through. Absolutely foot perfect. Well, I'm sure Robert was really bitterly disappointed with how Poser went, although he was trailblazing for the course, but Private Eye now going so much better for him. This horse, in fact, quite experienced because ridden by its owner, was part of the young rider squad. Morag being very economical with the turns at Tom Smith's. but still taking the long route there. There haven't been many to risk the 20 penalties at the corner. Beltane. Now this fence, the silver birch, has caused quite a lot of trouble, but not for Beltane and Rosalind Small.
Now one of the foreign competitors from Holland, it's Simon de Jong with Salon de Kay. Simon, who's ridden in the European Championship for Holland. And Holland's certainly trying to get very much back into the international competition these days. As Beltane jumps the hazard, she'd feel a bit of a Charlie if she fell there. It wouldn't incur any penalties, just a lot of time. But anyway, on she goes.
Just setting up for the angle at the Vicarage V, the crucial angle. And Robert missed it. That's what tends to happen if you just don't get it absolutely right.